Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar on attachments in Sage 50 Payroll. My name's Alice, and I'll be your presenter for today's webinar. So we'll begin with an introduction to attachments and the different attachment types that can be set up in Sage 50 Payroll. We'll then talk about working out how much to deduct, so whether that's a specific amount or a calculated amount from the attachment tables. Then we'll see how to set up and assign attachments to your employees, processing attachments, and a little look at how they show on payslips and another report as well. And we'll finish with an optional quiz to test your knowledge at the end as well. So attachment types. There are 17 attachment types in Sage 50 Payroll, and these all relate to different debt deduction orders that you might receive from a court or other issuing authority. We've grouped some of them together just to show you what they are, as they kind of cover 5 broad categories. So we can see that list of 17 on the right, and let's take a little look at those groups. So first are debt deductions, which are references 1, 4 and 12. These are classed as either priority or non-priority, and that will be made clear on the information that you receive regarding the attachment, whether it is or isn't. So these attachments are 1971 priority, 1971 non-priority, or the fines enforcement attachment as well, which is the one with tables to calculate the amounts, which we'll talk about in a little while. Next category is child maintenance. So these are reference numbers 2, or more commonly reference 14, which is child maintenance 2012. The main difference with these is that the child maintenance 2012 uses the protected earnings of 60% instead of a specified amount, which the other child support attachment does. Next attachments are community charge or council tax debt. So the community charge is the official name for poll tax from the 90s, but these aren't very common at all nowadays. They're references 5 and 6. And then council tax attachments relate to all council tax debts, with the exception of Welsh council tax, which has its own category just at the bottom of that list, reference 17. There's then Scottish earnings arrestments. These fall into categories 8, 9 and 10. And more recent types, so benefit debt deductions as well, otherwise known as direct earnings attachments. These are references 15 and 16. So there's a normal rate DEA and a higher rate DEA as well, and DEA just meaning direct earnings attachment. So let's move on to working out how much to deduct. There's 2 ways that the attachment amount would be deducted. The first way would be an order which has a normal deduction rate, so a specific amount that needs to be deducted each period. And often these attachments will have a protected earnings amount, which is the amount that the deduction must not reduce the employee's net pay below. So say the protected earnings for an employee was £1,200. The attachment wouldn't be able to deduct an amount that would then take the employee's net pay below that £1,200. So as a result, if there was some of the attachment that couldn't be deducted because of the protected earnings, in some cases it could carry that forward into the next period and then deducted then if the protected earnings allowed. There's also the option to set up an admin fee as well, where you can deduct an extra £1 per attachment towards your costs. This is optional, and this comes off the employee. And then just the image on this slide as well is an image of a CAPS attachment, and that's a type of attachment that would tell you how much to deduct each period and often what the protected earnings are as well. So that's the first way that you can calculate an attachment. The other way is actually through the attachment of earnings tables. So this is usually using tables with bands for either weekly or monthly paid employees, and it's usually a percentage of those earnings to deduct for the attachment. So I've got a screenshot of an example with a council tax attachment. This is just from the table in the company legislation. And as you can see, there's the left table for weekly and the right-hand side for monthly. So let's just look at monthly, for example. Let's say an employee's attachable pay was £280 a week. That deduction rate would fall into that second last row on the left table, and therefore the deduction rate for that employee's attachment would be 12% towards the council tax debt. Now, the good thing with these tables, they are all built into the programme already, so you'll find these in the company legislation. And at the top of the screenshot, you'll notice the attachment type drop down as well, and the effective from drop down, so you can select the attachment type from there. And Payroll refers to these tables in the legislation and will work out the amount to deduct for you if the attachment type uses those tables, of course. So these tables are in the company legislation. Let's take a look at where to find them in the programme now. I'll just turn off my camera and I'll bring up Payroll. And just from my company tasks, I'm going to click on legislation. And this has everything from tax, NI to parental payments. I'm just going to click on AEO rates. And this is where you'll find those tables. So this first drop down includes those 17 types of attachments there. Not all of them have tables. Council tax does though, so I'm going to select this. And I'm just going to make sure this effective from date is correct there as well. And then here are the banded earnings and deductions to take for weekly and monthly employees. For council tax too, at the bottom you can see that where the attachable earnings exceed the highest entry shown on the table, so £2,020 for monthly employees for example, you should then take 50% of the excess and 17% of the earnings up to that £2,020. And I will show an example of this a little bit later on in the demo. So these legislation tables are really handy, and they can also help you to establish the type of attachment. If you've been given information with tables but you aren't quite sure on the category to use, you can come and change this drop down in here and look for the table that you need. So what counts as earnings then when it comes to attachments? Well, it's most payments that are subject to tax and national insurance that should be included in the attachable pay. So this includes wages and salary, including bonuses and overtime, holiday pay and other advances, pension payments as well, so if the employee is being paid through a pension through an occupational scheme, and statutory sick pay as well, which is the only statutory payment that counts towards attachable pay. What's not included is statutory redundancy pay, statutory maternity, paternity and adoption pay. And as always, I have linked some more information at the bottom of this slide if you would like to read more about attachments in England and Wales. I just wanted to start with a little bit about attachment types, how the deduction can be calculated, and also what counts as the earnings when it comes to attachments. But now let's move on to setting up and assigning those attachments. So when you receive an attachment order for an employee, you'll need to decide on not whether to deduct that £1 admin fee. If you are, there's a drop-down menu against each type of attachment where you'll select yes or no. So you'll see on that left screenshot. You also have the option of adding a replacement description for attachments as well. So this would replace the text on the payslips, various reports as well, which I'll show you examples of later, and also on screen when you enter the payments as well. You'll also need to check whether your pay elements are set up correctly and subject to attachments when necessary. So on the right you can see settings for community charge, council tax and other attachments. So you'll need to make sure that these are set up for any payments that count towards attachable pay. So let's go to a demo. I'm just going to show you these settings. And I'm going to stay in the company tasks, but this time I'm just going to go 2 up from legislation to pay elements. And in here, I'll click on the attachment of earnings orders tab. So here are those 17 attachments. I've got that list here. I've got the replacement description column as well, and of course that admin fee as well. Now I'd like to charge an admin fee on council tax attachments. So against reference 7 for council tax, I'm just going to change this drop down to specify yes for the admin fee. And as for descriptions, I am happy with most of these, apart from the 1971 priority and the 1971 non-priority as well. These will show on the pay slips like this, and I don't really feel like the employee will know what it is. So I would like to add a replacement description for both of these. Let's call it priority AEO and non-priority AEO. And there we go. I just feel like that will make more sense to the employee. A little bit more descriptive that it's an attachment of earnings as well. So I'll now go into the pay element settings, just in the payments tab there. And you can see I've got pay elements there set up for overtime, commission and expenses. So overtime and commission are subject to tax and national insurance, and these should be included in attachable pay. So I'm just going to double check that these pay element settings are correct. And I'll do this just by clicking edit. And you can see I've actually already ticked the boxes on the right to say that they're subject to community charge, council tax and other attachments. So overtime's fine. Let me just check commission as well. So I'll click edit. And again, they're already ticked, so they are subject to those attachments. And last one, I'm just going to check expenses. And I can see those boxes are unticked. I don't actually want expenses to be included here, so they're cleared. And if you are troubleshooting why an attachment isn't deducting, it is definitely worth checking these pay element settings just to check whether they are subject to attachments, as if they aren't, that would be likely why the attachment isn't calculating correctly. So do come in here, that's just in the company pay elements. So that's the pay element settings. And now I'd like to show you how to assign those attachments to the employees. So I've got 3 attachments to add. And you can do this via the employee's record. So I'll open this up. And you can add these in the employment tab and just pay elements at the bottom. And in here, there's an attachment of earnings orders tab. And this is where you'll input the details. So my first employee has received a council tax attachment. If it was a Welsh council tax, that would be reference 17, but it's not, so I'm just going to select reference number 7. And as we saw in the legislation earlier, council tax is an attachment that uses tables, so we can see that's been ticked just at the bottom of this box here. So this tick box specifies whether payroll uses the tables for the attachment types that calculate using the bands on those tables. That is ticked automatically, so I'm going to leave that tick there. And then just back up here, we've got the normal deduction rate and the protected earnings. Now I can't edit these, so even if I click in them, they're just set there as 0. That's because the deduction rate is calculated for us, and the protected earnings is a percentage based on the band. But we do need to enter that total attachment. So for the information that I've received, that's £5,500 in this case. The order issue date, which I've received as the 1st of May 2024. And if we've got it, the order reference number 2, which in this case is that. And that is that first attachment all set up for my first employee. So that's going to deduct the council tax attachment until either this total amount is reached or until I receive an order end date as well. So if I've been notified to end the attachment, I would put in an order end date. So I'm just going to save this and move on to my next employee. And again, that's in pay elements and attachment of earnings orders. So my second employee has a child support attachment that I need to add. Now, I've been told that this has a normal deduction rate and that there's protected earnings of 60%. So I know that this is a more recent child support attachment, meaning it's going to be reference number 14, which is the child support 2012. So I've selected that from the drop down. And this one does use a normal deduction rate. I've been told that's £240, so I'll enter that there. And again, you'll notice I can't enter this protected earnings. That's because for child support 2012, it's 60% of the attachable pay, and I won't be able to edit that. As for the total, child support does tend to be ongoing. There's not normally a total attachment amount, so I am going to leave that as 0 in this case. And that means it'll keep deducting the necessary amount until I'm instructed to stop the attachment, in which case, again, I'd pop in an order end date. And then last thing in here really is the order issue date. So again, that's the 1st of May 2024. And with child support, you do need to create a deduction schedule to send to the child maintenance people. So I'm going to enter my order reference number 2, which is just a nice creative order reference number there. And I'm just going to save that record now. So that's 2 attachments set up now. Last one, my third employee. This employee has a non-priority attachment. We were given a normal deduction rate and protected earnings, but I was told that it wasn't priority. So I'm just going to add the non-priority AEO. And notice as well that this is that new replacement description that we added as well. So it was previously called 1971 non-priority. But of course that's changed now. So I'll select that from the drop down. I'm going to enter my normal deduction rate of £150. And the protected earnings I've been told as well, which is £1,000. And the total attachment of £3,000. And then last thing, same as the others, the order issue date was the 1st of May 2024. Now at the bottom, you'll notice this tick box isn't ticked to use the tables. That is correct, as this attachment doesn't use tables. It instead uses that normal deduction rate. So I'm okay to leave that cleared, and I'll just click save and close the record. So that's the attachments all set up and assigned to my 3 employees. I set up the admin fee for the council tax attachment in the company pay elements, and I also added replacement descriptions for a few attachments as well, which is of course done in the same place. We then assigned the attachments in the employee's record and pay elements, where we selected the attachment type, filled in the relevant information and totals. And remember, do check that tick box at the bottom as well. If the attachment type uses tables, make sure that's ticked, so such as council tax, for example. So with them assigned and ready to go, that does bring us on to processing attachments, and we can check that they're being deducted correctly in the next pay run. I'll dive straight back into the demo. And I'm just going to double check my process date, which is the 31st of May for me. So that's my next pay date for my monthly payroll. And I can see that set there. And I'm just going to go into enter payments. So here I've got employee number 1. I've got enter payments for them. Their salary there, £2,500. And I'm just going to go into attachments and check that value there. So in here I can see the council tax attachment, the attached value there being calculated for me. I've got that £1 admin fee which I specified, and the attachable earnings as well, which is the gross pay, take away the tax and national insurance. Then this column is showing the amount that's actually being deducted. So how did I get to £361.62? Well, this depends on the tables and the employee's earnings. So remember, this employee's gross pay is £2,500. Let's just pop back to that legislation and check the band that they're going to be in. So company legislation, AEO rates. And I'm just going to select council tax. That's the attachment type that they've got. And then for my monthly employee with earnings in excess of £2,020, it's going to be 17% up to the £2,020, and then 50% on anything over, as per this message just at the bottom. So let's go back to enter payments and just work out how it's got to that amount. And I've just opened up a calculator there. So we'll start with the attachable earnings, which for this employee is £2,056.44. And I'm going to take off that excess, which is £2,020. So £36.44. We need to work out 50% of this excess. So times 50% is £18.22. So that's for anything over that £2,020 at 50%. I now need to work out 17% of that £2,020. So times that by 17%, that equals £343.40. I'll then add on that £18.22 again. So that was anything above the £2,020. And that gets us to £361.62. So that is the amount that's being deducted. Just wanted to show you how it's doing that, but that's for my first employee. So that amount will be deducted this period, and it will be taken from that total attachment value, which was £5,500, and the attachment will be calculated and deducted until that total has been reached, or until I've been notified to stop the attachment, in which case I would enter an order end date. Let's move on to my next employee, employee number 2. So this employee has the child support attachment, which I can see is deducting £240. I can change this in here, but I'm just going to leave that as it is. No admin fee specified for this attachment type. And I've then got the attachable earnings as well. And remember, the protected earnings for this attachment type is 60% of that amount. So it can take the full amount of £240. Now let's say there's been a change of plan, this employee's fallen ill and they've had to take a full month on statutory sick pay. So what I'll do is I'll remove their salary, and I'm just going to go to the SSP tab and add in that month of SSP for them. I can see that SSP payable of £467. Let's now check that attachment then. So we can see the attachable pay has changed. That is the SSP amount plus the tax rebate here. And if we just work out what 60% of that is, it should be the protected earnings. So the attachable earnings times 60% is £349.92, which we can see as the net pay as well. So the employee's net pay cannot go below this figure, which is why we can see that there. But as a result, it's not able to take that full £240. Instead, it's taking £233.28 and actually carrying forward that amount of £6.72. So assuming the employee has sufficient attachable pay next period, that carried forward amount can then be taken on top of the attachment's normal deduction rate. And my last employee has attachment that non-priority AEO, so £150 the attached value. Protected earnings was £1,000 in this example, so it is able to take that whole amount of £150. Now let's say they were on half pay this month for some reason. Let me just change their salary, so I'll half that there. And now when I go to check the attachment, it can't take that full amount, so it's only taken £9.60, as that would take it below the protected earnings. So this £9.60 there is actually the maximum that it can deduct. Now, unlike the previous example, this one does not have a carried forward amount, so we can see that as 0. That's because it's non-priority. If it was a priority attachment, there would then be a carried forward amount in here. So a little bit about how it's calculating those 3 attachments. And with enter payments done, I am going to move on with my payroll. So there's a few pre-update reports that I would like to show you. And I'll just find those from my payroll tasks. I do have them both favorited here. So the first one is just the laser pay slips, just the standard layout for them. You can also find them from the laser section. So let's preview these. And I just want to show you how those attachments are showing. So first employee, I can see that council tax attachment showing there. Just scroll down. Same with the second employee, that child support 2012. And if I just scroll down, that third employee, I can see that non-priority AEO. And remember, this is the replacement description that we added near the beginning of the webinar. This will change how it looks for the pay slips for the employee as well. Another report that I would recommend is actually the attachment of earnings report. So I've favorited this, but you can also find this from the summary section. Just the second one down, and let me preview this. So this one shows more detail on the attachments themselves. So we've got the first employee's attachment on page 1, second on page 2, etc. But just shows more information about the protected earnings, the attachment amount. and also the attachment that's being deducted as well. And if I just look at employee number 3, they're the one with that replacement description, I can see it is the 1971 non-priority attachment that they've got, but we've also got our alternative description there of non-priority AEO. So I would advise either printing or exporting, saving this report. You've just got those options in the top left, just so you've got record of that attachment information. So that was just a few pre-update reports I'd like to show you. And just to finish this demo as well, I'm just going to update my records for this period. And I'll take a backup at this point as well. I'm just going to call this month 1 pre-update, just so I've got a backup that I can go back to if I need. And then I'll work through the update records wizard to update my records for May. So we can see those 3 employees there have been updated. And just to kind of finish off, I would like to set my process date to my next month, and I'd like to show you the attachment values for the next period in Enter Payments. So my next pay date will be the 30th of June 2024. And let's go back to Enter Payments. Just go to the attachment tab for employee number 1. So I can see that attachment continues to be deducted for my first employee. So that's all good, no change there. Employee number 2, let's give this employee back their full wage as they are no longer on SSP, so they're back to work. We'll give them back that salary of £2,000. And if I go back to attachments, I can now see it is able to take that full amount there. And it's also added on that carried forward amount that it couldn't take last period. So it would normally take £240, but it's added on that £6.72 that it couldn't take due to the protected earnings stopping the full amount being taken. So that's employee number 2, all good as well. And then my third employee, I'm just going to put their salary back up to the normal amount. So I did half that last period. So £2,000. And we can now see it is able to take again that full attachment value there of £150. Now remember, this one didn't have a carried forward amount as it was non-priority. So it'll just remain at that 150. So that is processing attachments. I did just want to show you a few examples so you can see them in action there. And just to finish on a top tip, so this applies to any employees who have multiple attachments. There is a particular order that you would need to deduct them in. So priority attachments first in the date order that they were received, followed by non-priority. So let's say this employee number 3, had another attachment come through for council tax. So that's a priority attachment, and that would take priority over any existing attachment, which is non-priority, so this one here. So let me go to their record. I'll just use this little shortcut. And again, I'm going to go to Employment, Pay Elements, and Attachment of Earnings Orders. And I'm going to add in this new council tax attachment that they've received. So remember, this one uses the tables, so I can see it's automatically ticked that box at the bottom. And remember, I can't edit that normal deduction rate or protected earnings. So I'll just need to add in the total attachment, which is going to be £2,500, and the order issue date as well, which is going to be the 1st of June 2024. And I can see it's added it as priority number 2. So we can see that just here, but this one should actually be first. So it takes priority over that non-priority attachment of earnings. So if you do ever need to switch them, for the existing attachment, I'll set that priority to 0, which then means I can change the new attachment to priority number 1, and then go back to change that kind of old one there to priority number 2. So I've essentially switched them round, and now it's going to deduct that council tax one first and the non-priority one second, so they're now going to be deducted correctly. That's just a little tip there. If you do have employees with multiple attachments, there is a correct order to deduct them in. But that is it for the demo for now. So let's go back to the slides and just have a little bit of a recap of what we did there to process the attachments. So the attachment tabs in Enter Payments is going to give you all of the detail. So the attachable value is either the normal deduction rate that you've added or using the tables. The admin fee is the £1 if you've set that up as well. And attachable earnings is the pay remaining after PAYE and national insurance. The amount deducted is what's being taken, and then if it's applicable, you'll have amounts carried forward due to protected earnings. But remember that this is only for priority orders. So I have added information on attachments at the bottom of most of the slides throughout the presentation. So please do download the handouts. You'll have a copy of the presentation and you will be able to check out all of those links which I've put at the bottom of the slides as well. But that does bring us onto the next section of the webinar, which is the quiz. So totally optional, but would be great for you to get involved. And I'll do this by running a poll for you to select your answer, and then I'll share the results and reveal the correct answer to you. So I've got 3 questions. Let me launch that first one now. And you should find that on the screen coming up soon. So question number 1, where can you find the attachment of earnings tables in Sage 50 Payroll? So is it in company, legislation and AEO rates? Is it company, pay elements and attachments? Or is it the employee's record, pay elements and attachment of earnings? So where can you find the attachment of earnings tables in Sage 50 Payroll? And I'll leave that open for about a minute and then I'll reveal those answers to you. So is it in the company legislation, company pay elements or the employee's record and pay elements? A couple more seconds there. Perfect, I'll close that one down and just share those results. So we can see 86% of you have said company, legislation and AEO rates. 86% of you were correct, so well done. 6% of you have said company and pay elements and attachments. That's actually where you'll specify the admin fee and also the replacement descriptions as well. And then 9% of you have said in the employee's record, pay elements and attachments. So that's where you can set up the attachments. So remember that's where I inputted the information. But you can find the earnings, the attachment of earnings tables in the company legislation and AEO rates. So well done if you got that one right. I'll move on to question number 2 now, which is, which attachment type would you assign for a child maintenance attachment with 60% protected earnings? So which attachment type would you assign for a child maintenance attachment with 60% protected earnings? Would it be child support, deductions of earnings order, or child support 2012? And I did mention this throughout the webinar, so hopefully you picked up on those hints. So which attachment type would you assign for a child maintenance attachment with 60% protected earnings? Is it child support, deductions of earnings order, or child support 2012? Looks like most of you are getting that right, so I'll reveal that answer very shortly. And let me close that poll and share those results. So 5% of you said child support, 1% said deduction of earnings order, and 93% said child support 2012. So 93% of you are correct. Remember that's the kind of the newer child support attachment there, and that does have the 60% protected earnings. So well done if you got that one right as well. Let me just hide that. And last question then, which is kind of a true or false one. Let me just share that poll to you. So if a non-priority attachment of earnings is not deducted due to protected earnings, it will be carried forward to the next period. Is that true or false? So if a non-priority attachment of earnings is not deducted due to protected earnings, it will be carried forward to the next period. So I did show an example of this in the demo as well. Let's see what you say. So is that true or false? So if a non-priority attachment of earnings is not deducted due to protected earnings, it will be carried forward to the next period. And I'll just close that now and share those results with you. So 31% of you said true and 69% of you said false. And it is actually false. So a non-priority attachment of earnings, remember, if it can't be deducted due to protected earnings, because it's non-priority, there is not going to be a carried forward amount. However, if it was a priority, that's when it would have that carried forward amount. So well done if you got that one right as well. And thank you for your participation there as well. That is the end of the quiz, so thank you there. And that does bring us to the end of the main webinar content as well for attachments. But before we do wrap things up, I would like to go through a little bit of further support with you all as well. So for webinars, me and Duncan run these throughout the year for Sage 50 Payroll. We've got lots coming up this month, including maternity pay, shared parental pay and more. So you can head to sage.co.uk/webinars or click on register now on the handout to read a little bit more about these, and hopefully we'll see you all there. We've also got the Sage Help Centre, so all of the articles which I've linked in the slides are from here. Super handy resource, but you can search the knowledge base, you can access those support guides, there's loads of demonstration videos and recordings of our webinars as well. And should you need to get in touch, you can contact the experts as well. And then last thing really for further support is going to be Sage University. So here you can set up a free account and you can access e-learning, bite-sized learning, as well as earning product certification too. So if you're new to Sage or you've been with Sage for a while, it is just a great way to expand your knowledge on Sage 50 Payroll or other Sage products too. But that does bring us to the end. So keep an eye on your emails for a recording of the webinar coming through to you. You can rewatch that as many times as you need, including those demonstrations. But yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully we'll see you on another webinar very soon. So on behalf of me and Duncan, we'll see you next time. Goodbye.